Hello, everybody. I am Sri Krishna, an editor at VentureBeat, and in that capacity, I write about AI, machine learning, and data science. And today, I'm really excited to be talking about low code, no code with two um, two experts in the industry. With us, we have Philip Lacken, founder of No Code Ops, and Jason Miller, head of pre-sales for the Americas at Creatio. Philip, Jason, welcome to the show. Now, why don't you introduce yourself a bit, Philip, and then Jason, I'll leave the floor to you.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Phil Blake, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of NoCode Ops. We are a community and newsletter for operational professionals in the no-code space. About 9,000 strong, all marketing operations, sales operations, people operations folks that are using no-code in their day-to-day work. Using a variety of different platforms. And then we've also built a infrastructure tool for no code tools like Zapier and Make called Switchboard. That's us.
Thanks. And my name's Jason Miller. I am head of pre-sales at Creatio, as was mentioned. Now, Creatio is a no-code platform, previously known as BPM Online. And what we've done is we've used the power of no-code to help empower citizen developers and no-coders to accelerate some of the things that they're doing in business process automation, digital process flows, as well as sales, service, and marketing. You can find us in the leaders quadrant and many of your favorite analysts report, as well as top of the board in many of the no-code platform playbooks. So we're looking forward to the discussion today. Appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you both, gentlemen. And given that we have two very different perspectives on board here, I'd like to first start out with Philip, who's representing the local no code community over here. So, what has the technology meant in 2022?
Yeah. So, my point of view here is that a lot of this stuff has been around for a long time, right? WYSIWYG's been around for a long time. No code page builders have been around for a long time. I mean, as far as programming, as long as programming has been around, there's been new levels of abstracting things away, right? To make them easier and easier to work with. In fact, even like the early C programmers would be considered low code to their earlier counterparts, so they would be considered low coders to them. So it's just further and further levels of abstraction. A lot of no coders today are bigger on using the mouse and the keyboard, we like to say, right? So they're visually designed things, they're dragging and dropping, but they're creating really complex workflows, both internally in their businesses and externally to customer, facing parts of the business as well. So what no code means today is just the ability to move really fast and create something really custom with either a platform or a combination of platforms, or in congruence with other coded or legacy parts of someone's stack. So you can think of using no code for something as straightforward as creating an automation pipeline for when a customer does this, we want this type of notification to go to this type of account executive in this channel. And when they respond with a certain response, we want that to then ping our accounts payable team, whatever, right? So there's that type of straightforward actions and back-end workflows. But then things also get complex is, we want to build a part of our business that's a marketplace that is in relationship to our business. So we don't have developer talent because that's an ancillary part of our business, and the developers working on the core part of the technology offering of the business. So to build that talent marketplace that's really owned by the marketing department, we want to build that from scratch using no code tools. So whether using something a little bit more white label, where you're just making some smaller decisions around customization, like using a platform like ShareTribe, or creating that completely from scratch using a platform like Bubble. So no code is very much a grayscale. It's not just one size fits all. There's combinations of platforms, single platforms. There's white label. There's verticalized no code for different verticals. There's internal and external facing. So lots of different shapes and sizes, but really helping non-technical people achieve things that were only previously achievable by very highly technical individuals and teams.
Thank you for that.
I think that that's absolutely on point there, Philip. And I think you hit on a lot of great points. I think one of the things that we think about at Creatio is really a focus on driving that automation and pushing. People have talked about shift left for years, but pushing that back to the business, right? Folks who are closest to those business processes and folks that are very much in tune with how the business is operating. I think we all know that IT backlogs have been growing faster than ever. And obviously, with that, there needs to be a new way to think about application development. And you talked about it. You talked about the ability to empower many of those folks that typically were never able to sit at the table when talking about application development. And to us, that's really what's helping drive this no code revolution. And it's a little bit of a fallacy, and we'll talk about some of the myths here in a few minutes, but it's a little bit of a fallacy that says no code can't sit in and around legacy applications and it can't be part of your application development lifecycle. And I know as we go through the discussion today, we're going to hit on some of those myths, but I think you absolutely defined it well, that it's that new way of looking at how people are doing application development to help accelerate time to market, drive lower total cost of ownership, and get to ROI much faster.
Mhm. Right, Jason. That was an interesting point you brought there. And much like with any technology that kind of gains prominence, there's a lot of myth that come around concerning how it's going to be used, the impact it's going to have. Could you, elaborate on that point a bit more?
Yeah. So, look, there's always concerns with how is this stuff going to be used? Like, you're giving very powerful tools to people with little to no, background or education in the software development life cycle, in bringing technical products to life, in product management, right? Like, we are still in the very early days of this version of no code. Developing things like best practices and governance and centers of excellence, and this is all very new to this industry, or this version of the industry as it's evolved in no code. But look, I think some of the myths are, it is one size fits all. Like, we either it's all no code or it's not. And we've seen that that's not true with hybrid approaches, with folks saying, hey, our developers are going to work on this technical part, this like highly technical part of our infrastructure, right? Maybe we have on the next level up like some Salesforce admins bringing some of that event data in from our application and baking that into our CRM. But like, even Salesforce has become too clunky for a lot of folks to use, and you have to go through an admin and get permission and be on a roadmap. Like, no coders do not like roadmaps or being on other people's roadmaps, so like creating our own roadmaps, right? And so, the way to think about it is it's like this grayscale of like, you have like the highly technical product, you have like the kind of mid-tier technical products like Salesforce, where still a lot of technical things going on, but takes a lot of time to build and get things right. And then the things that sit on top of that, department by department, where people want their own views of their data without going to someone centrally. I think Jason nailed it, where the power of no code is that the people in the departments who are closest to the problems, that care the most about them, that are the most incentivized to solve these things, that have the most intimate knowledge about what's actually happening on the ground, are finally empowered to fix these problems in the way that they and their direct stakeholders want and need. We're seeing something very similar happen with no coders that happened with data a few years back, where it used to be every team had to rely on a central data team to get all the data they wanted. They would have to sit in this huge queue to get the dashboards they wanted. And then that got decentralized to the point where every person had, every team had someone on their team that was a data person that could pull those reports from a central BI function. So they weren't so reliant on a central BI team. They had like their own ambassador. And I think the same thing is happening with no code for all these teams. That's why you hear terms now like marketing ops, sales ops, people ops. So I just wanted to echo that, Jason. I just love that point that the people closest to the problem finally get to fix it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing, and I think that's when we're talking about myths about no code, there's a bunch of them, right? And it's around whether or not we should empower the business, right? In the past, that's always been a very faux pas thing. The ability to create shadow IT and lose control from a governance standpoint has always been some of the IT group's biggest fears. I think with no code platforms, it's the beauty of it is it's no longer in that situation. These enterprise grade tools, in Creatio being one of them, is we give that governance and control to the IT groups that they've been longing for, that so they can empower the business that in such a way that it doesn't drive this wild west. And it allows that fusion team approach to have both no coders and professional developers sit together. We know that there's just not enough developers out there. So having these fusion teams work together to solve problems, it's just like when we started putting agile teams together. This is that next iteration, that next phase on how teams are going to work together to solve problems using a more modern digital approach.
Hmm. Right, right. And building on to that a bit more, Jason and Philip. So, what would you say is the benefit at the end of the day by getting everybody, both low coders and developers, onto one single platform?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And Jason and I know just from our previous chats, like we have very different opinions here, which I'm like so excited to jam on. So, my thinking here is that, look, if you can get everyone on the same platform, amazing, right? But what we've seen a lot of from our, in like growing, hyper growth teams or large enterprise companies, teams move independently of each other and teams don't want to wait for other teams to adopt technology, right? If you're the business leader that's waiting to get sign off from every other team to finally solve your on the ground needs, you're typically not around at that company long enough to see that come to fruition, right? Because people need results. And so, you know, depending on how healthy or how fast a company can move, sure, people can get aligned around all being on one platform. Or if the department itself is big enough, they can definitely get on a platform. But when a company is large enough or moving fast enough where they're just like, look, our department just needs a solution and it's got to pass snuff on the IT and security front, but we're not waiting for the other folks. We just got to build this thing and then maybe it lands and expands, great. But that's the folks that we tend to work with a lot and our verticalized functions that we typically work with at No Code Ops. And so this is really why our thinking is that the future of no code in some cases will be a lot of folks, at a company using one single platform to develop things on. But there's another huge segment of the population that different teams are going to be using a combination of different tools and they're going to have different needs. Just like project management looks different in marketing than it looks in sales, right? So they have different tools that are more verticalized to their needs. Same thing happens with no code. Some teams, at the same company, one team might really love using Zapier, another team might really love using Make. One team might want to build their CRM in Creatio because they have very specific needs, when it touches certain legacy SaaS and they have certain, things that they need to do from a governance perspective. Another team like marketing, when just doing some marketing analytics and some, more light CRM stuff, might want to use Airtable. And we see that all the time where different folks, different companies do have different needs that they want to go by. Now, in a perfect world, everyone would just be on the same system and that would be great. But even when that's the case, no coders do want modularity is what we find, where they do want to be able to take certain things in and put certain things out and not rely all on one system for all of their needs, because then they're just completely beholden to the updates from that, from that company. So that's just the big thinking why we were so interested in not building another, platform in the no code space with Switchboard. It's why we really focus on the infrastructure. It's how do you think about governance and getting everyone on one platform when everyone's on different platforms? And that's why we thought about, okay, how do we productize governance through infrastructure? But that's my hot take.
Yeah, and Philip, you're right, because obviously we at Creatio and I think about it a little bit differently, right? Because you just mentioned a lot of great reasons why you would want to be on multiple platforms. I also think that those are the exact same reasons why you'd want to be more towards a single platform. and we think about it from a governance standpoint. Obviously, managing governance across a platform is much easier to do than trying to manage governance and change control across 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 different platforms, right? And a lot of times it's just easier if you've got economies of scale. It's easier to put the people necessary in place to manage governance in a single platform versus multiple. That's kind of topic one. Topic two is it's great, but if you think about it, there's other problems with these multiple platform ideas. You have to build integrations. You have to be able to sync data across these multiple platforms. It's much easier to do that in a single platform than it is 5, 6, 7. Now, I agree, there is probably no single platform that's right for every single person. But to your point, modularity, the ability to build containers, the ability to use small blocks and segments to build upon each other, to build applications, that's where we're going at Creatio and building a modular approach. Matter of fact, we're launching our composable architecture as part of our next release. You're going to see more and more platforms moving towards this approach so that you can do these small pieces without impacting the larger organization. And to me, that's why one platform makes sense. You don't have to use every bit of the platform, but having a platform that gives you that flexibility to manage the small things quickly and easily, as well as the really big, heavy gorillas that are in the room, ultimately, I think is the right answer. And I'll go one step further. Having a platform that allows both the professional developers who like to code as well as the no coders sitting in the same place makes it move even faster. You can have developers go out and develop in an IDE where they're comfortable and they've been working forever, but ultimately you either have a separate application that you then need to integrate to, or you can give them the ability to take that code that they've built in that IDE, their favorite IDE, and bring it back into a no-code platform to where they can all work together and achieve outcomes. That's what we're focused on at Creatio, and that's why we think more of a one-platform approach may make the most sense for most enterprises.
And I'll add this here, right? Such good points. Like, there are things that you get in a single platform approach with no code that you just can't today, right? With a multi-platform approach, seeing how everything's unfolding from an IT and development standpoint, being able to productize certain policies, being able to track what's being done by who and what changes are affecting what, and dependency mapping, right? Like that, if I were to have my cake and eat it too, and like, this is very much why we were excited to get into the business of infrastructure that we're, getting into, is that, like, what does the future look like if you can have your cake and eat it too, right? Where you can be on 3 or 4 different platforms, so everyone gets the tools they want to use. Say their CRM is Creatio, their integrator is Zapier, they're like ad hoc smaller things, for certain areas, or an Airtable, right? Like, that's just how the business unfolded and wanted to work. If that could happen in that kind of modular capacity, where there's still a certain level of infrastructure over top of it, where you can get that observability and reliability piece that's missing from today's market of just, a bunch of people using a bunch of different tools and no one knows what's going on, and somebody changes a field in, an Airtable or Creatio and it breaks something, right? Like, that is the future that I and the team are pushing for. Like, that is very much what I want to see. So TLDR, what y'all are doing at Creatio with just like the different containers and structures, like, you are setting the benchmark for what we want to do for a multi-platform approach. So yeah, it's really exciting to see.
That's great, gentlemen. So we have talked a lot about how low code can be used, but is there any real example or use cases that either one of you can give on how your customers are using it as things stand? Hello?
Yeah, for sure. Jason, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. So Creatio, we're proud of a lot of our customers, but one in particular stands out in my mind, and that's the government of Israel. So we worked with our partner, Nativity of Israel, and what they've done is they've implemented, call it a new way for the government, the Ministry of Finance, the Transportation Department to take in all of the permitting and all of the review process, and think of all that workflow automation for every time you need to cut through a piece of red tape. They've got over 4,000 users that are using this portal every single day to do submissions, work requests, look at the status of their proposals, get things reviewed by the government. And it's amazing because through the net power of no code, we've not only been able to accommodate that volume and that traffic coming through. Think about the Israeli government. We were able to literally take a language that normally runs from left to right in pick a language and run it from right to left in Hebrew because that's the way they operate. And we were able to do that with our partner in really no time at all. And it's an amazing thing. There's some videos out there. I'd encourage you to go find them. But absolutely, it's probably one of our favorite use cases. Philip, how about you?
Well, sorry, I have an interesting question for that. As someone who used to work for an Israeli-based rideshare company called Get, in your CRM that you built for the government in Israel, do their chevrons of stages in the CRM go right to left also?
Yes, they do.
That is so cool. Sorry, total nerd moment on my end. I love that.
It's amazing the things we take for granted because we're in the US or we're in India or we're wherever, and we're so used to reading things from left to right. But you think a lot of countries, top to bottom, right to left. Try to code that. It's almost impossible to think about it and handle the permeation.
That is so rad. For us, one of our earliest customers on the switchboard side of things, they were in the no code ops community. They used switchboard from an early on standpoint. So switchboard started out as a monitoring platform and error monitoring, incident response for Zapier and Make, the two largest no-code integration platforms. And so OnDeck, the education company, use us to monitor their apps. And so OnDeck's part of this new breed of company that they built almost all of their infrastructure with no code, almost all of it. And so they had thousands of zaps running that needed monitoring. And so we had worked with them on that and made sure the right person on the right team found out when something, went wrong. But what was really interesting for us was when working with them as an early design partner for the next version of our product that we're in the middle of building right now, where they really pushed us on an area that I didn't think was going to be that interesting, but ended up being really interesting for no coders in terms of scalability, which was documentation. Like documentations needed to scale this stuff. And especially in a cross application manner where they're using Airtable and Zapier and a bunch of platforms tied together. And they were they're spending hours every week manually documenting stuff and drawing it out in Miro boards and creating Notion docs and keeping them updated. And so they were part of the folks that really pushed us for the second version of our product, where monitoring is moving from the product to more so being a feature of what we do. And we're starting to now do things like automatic documentation, process mapping. And what we're starting to already see in our early experiments is that no coders, and I don't know how much coders, I think, plan a little bit more before they build. No coders is very much build and then look at how it went. We're very much build first, think later a little bit. At least I am. That's when I know code, and that's how a lot of our customers for sure are. And so we had to adjust how this worked for them. And so that's been really exciting to see how OnDeck is using our technology to build first, document next, but keep it scalable and keep it observable. So that's just been super exciting to be a part of a company that literally built from the ground up, all the way through a huge Series A, thousands of users, hundreds of employees, and almost everybody at the company in every seat is trained to some level as a citizen developer. That is pretty cool to be a part of their journey from an infrastructure standpoint.
Great, gentlemen. Thank you for sharing those impressive case studies. And I bet listening to that, a lot of our viewers would like to get in touch with you. So, Philip and Jason, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
For us, so I'm super active on Twitter. So at Philip Lakin, Philip with one L. And then for more info on joining our community, our newsletter, both are free. It's nocodeops.com. And then for more information on our infrastructure platform, it's runswitchboard.com.
Yeah, and for myself, I'm pretty active on Instagram at NoCode Evangelist. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And then from a Creatio standpoint, I do encourage you to go download a copy of the NoCode playbook. That's available for free on the Creatio website. We didn't even have time to talk about that today.
It's so good.
Catherine and Burley did an amazing job writing that book. You can also find out more information at www.creatio.com. Do appreciate the time today. Philip, this was awesome. I appreciate it.
Jason, great jamming. And Sri, thanks so much. And the whole team at VentureBeat, just so jazzed to be a part of this.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.